Hey, Stu here from Anywhere Bicycle Repair. Today I'm going to show you how to do a headset overhaul on this particular bicycle. Is a Trek Domane. Why do we want to do the headset overhaul? Because sometimes it creaks. You get a lot of water and debris inside here. It's not fully sealed, so it's good to clean this out, take it apart once a year. Especially in San Diego. So all you need is I use a tri-tool, but all you need is a Allen tool. This one particularly has a 4 millimeter Allen pinch bolts, and then actually there's a 5 mil on top. And that's all we're going to do. We're actually going to remove the brake too. So that's also a 5 mil. So first we'll start to remove the brake. This is just simply a 5 millimeter. That's my abbreviation. Take this back nut off here, pull this brake out, okay? Put that aside. Now we're going to loosen these pinch bolts. Pinch bolts meaning because this is the stem, pinching onto the fork. The fork goes all the way through here. We're going to remove these bolts here. There's one on each side. Alright, they're nice and loose. We're going to remove this top cap. This is a compression cap. This is actually once we set the compression, once we're done, that's what this does. It holds a little tension on the whole system while you're riding as well. But essentially it's just used for setup. So we're going to take this bolt out. This bolt has a cap. This is generally how a 1 1/8 headset works. So you have your top cap with the bolt. We're going to take that out. And that was just 3 bolts. This comes right off. We're going to let that hang down. Some bikes you'll have spacers. On a threadless setup like this, you'll have threadless spacers. These just essentially are put there for personal use, personal reasons. So you can have a much higher setup if you had the spacers like that where we had them. You can also have a much lower setup if we were to do something like this and take them all off and put this stem back on. We could set this bike up a lot lower, put the spacers back on top, or even cut this top off. So the spacers are just for actually personal reasons. He wants this thing to be a little higher. So that's it. We were going to put this back on exactly how we came off. Put these spacers aside. Let this hang down. And now this fork is going to pull right out. Now this is called the fork. This is essentially what holds the front wheel, and then you have your steer tube that comes up through the frame, and then the stem pinches on the top of this. You also have set your fork, and it's going to go through the head tube of the frame. This is your head tube of the frame. So now we're going to look at the head tube where the bearings sit. This cap was on there like that. When I pulled the cap, the bearing came with it. That's perfectly normal. We need to separate them. This one's going to be a little pain in the butt. There we go. So we separate them. What you have, let's clean this out so you can see it. Clean this bearing. So what you have is a very important part of a headset. What you have is the bearing that sits on there, that sits right on the top. What you have is a compression ring. It looks like a little tiny cone. What you have there is that sits right on top of that bearing. And that's going to hold all that together. It's going to hold the bottom and the top all together once that fork goes in. So you can't lose this. If you don't have this, you'll always have a loose headset. Sometimes I see that come in. A new bike comes out of the box, some sort of reason like that, or you're shipping a bike to someone. Used bike you buy. If the headset, meaning all this part right here, the headset's loose, everything's loose up here and you can't get it tight, you might be missing this. This is a very important part. Don't lose this. That's your compression ring. We also have a bearing on the bottom. On this particular bike, you have a much bigger bearing on the bottom than the top. Reason being, it sets up a lot stiffer. The bike feels stiffer when you're actually riding it. So you have pretty big bearing in the bottom. That's your bottom bearing, and that's your top bearing right there. You can, this is easily replaceable if these go bad, but this is a seal bearing. These actually, what you want to do is clean them up and then roll them with your hand a little bit and see how they feel. If they're notchy or you feel any grit or anything like that, then you're going to want to replace them. But these feel pretty good. You also don't want to hear them. It's audible as well when the bearing is bad. When a bearing is good, it should feel like you're rolling toothpaste. It should be very smooth and creamy feel, almost like butter. So these feel pretty good. You have a lot of life left on these. We're going to clean those. We're going to clean this head tube out. We're going to clean this bottom out here. Clean all the old grease out. And now we're going to put new grease in. Don't be stingy with the grease. Use a lot of it, especially in Southern California. We like to use this finish line grease. It's great. It's Teflon based. It's the best use for our climate. So I'm going to put a bunch in here, all through the bottom where the bearing sits. You want to put it all where the bearing sits. So that bearing is nice and cozy and comfy and a bunch of grease. We're also going to clean this dirty fork here. This is very common to get very dirty inside the headset. You have a wheel that's spinning inside around this fork. It's just kicking dirt up into here as it's spinning. So it's very common. There's a lot of buildup here. The lower bearing goes bad usually first. It also has more weight on it because you got your weight on the bottom of the bearing. Your top bearing actually wears a lot less. Although we've seen a bearing wear a lot from the top, because if you got addictive need to have sugar drinks, stuff like that, that gets all inside there and that'll ruin that bearing. Or if you're a big sweater, some people sweat a lot, that salt from the sweat actually will ruin that top bearing quick too. So it's good just to keep some wipe downs, simple things just wipe down periodically. So what we're going to do, put this thing back together. Everything's clean. We're again going to grease, use the brush this time. We're going to grease around here. This is where the bearing sits. We greased where the bearing sits in the frame. Now we're going to slide this bearing back on. Bearings have, especially in headsets, bearings have a little kind of a angle to it. You kind of see that. One side is actually 45 degree. The other side has a little bevel to it. So what you want to do with that bearing, see the bevel's on the bottom of this. So we're going to actually, the bevel goes towards the top. This actually sits like a race. It's like a cup. So the way that's shaped like that, when it's beveled, the bevel goes in. So we're going to put this on. So now the curve is on top. And it's going to curve on top inside the frame there. So what we're going to do is put this, let's see, we're turning the bars the right way. It's key. We're going to slide this back in, just like that. We're going to hold it there, so we got some tension on the bottom. This fork will just fall out if I don't. Again, the same thing. We have a very 90 degree on the one side, and it's actually got a bevel on the bottom on this one as well. We're going to put that bevel towards the inside of the frame. Just slide that in like that. This is your compression ring. This is the most important part of the whole headset. Your headset will not work without this. It won't work with any of the other parts, but this is the common part we see missing a lot. So what you're going to do is grease a little bit there. And slide this guy on, just like that. We're going to slide this cap on as well. This cap is how it was. And then we're going to slide those headset spacers back. And then we'll slide the stem back on. And now this is your compression bolt. We're going to put a little grease on the end of that bolt. There's the top bolt that came down through. You want to get this bolt tight first before you tighten those pinch bolts on the side. If I tighten this top bolt, I don't have to hold the bottom anymore because this is threading into the fork and now it's holding everything together. This doesn't have a torque spec, it is by feel. So what you want to do is if you want to go till it stops, you almost feel like you're starting to strip the bolt. It kind of feels like a very tightening feel. You want to stop there. What you're doing is just putting enough tension on this whole thing that the bearings stay in there nicely, but if you have too much tension, it won't steer. If there's not enough tension, it's going to move. It's a feeling thing. You'll get the feel of it by two ways you can check it. We'll check that in a minute. But you just want to snug this up. Next, we're going to put the brake back on. Put the nut back on the back. Put that nut back on there. And what I like to do is put that front wheel back on as well. So this is how we're going to check the headset. So let's put this wheel back on. Let's put the other wheel back on real quick. So to complete your headset overhaul, for the final check, it's best to take it out of the stand, sit it right down on the ground. What you want to do is use your front brake. The benefit of this is that's how we're going to check this compression. If you hold your front brake and loosen this to the point where you can feel it, you can almost feel a knock. It's like a dunk, 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 dunk in your hand. Sometimes you can hear it, feel it. You don't want that. That's when it's bad. What you want to do is go right past that. If you go right past that, you can feel that knock go away. It means everything is compressed nicely. There's no play in the headset. Right? We're going to do this a little snugger. What you want to not do is if you barrel this all the way down, we're going to put a little too much tension on the bearings. I'm not going to do that. But if that happens and you go too tight, you're not going to be able to steer it. So you do want to check it like this. You're going to go side by side, make sure it flows nice. And then we're going to put it on the ground, check with the front brake again. We're going to hold it and rock the bike. And there's no knocking there. So that top piece is done. We're simply now going to tighten the sides with the front wheel in. We can align the stem with the wheel. Sometimes you get a hold of it with your knees, and you kind of just have to eyeball it. A lot of times we double check it while we're riding the bike, because when you're riding the bike you can see a lot more too. But what you're going to do is essentially line this up. When you line that up, you can tighten these bolts down on the side. And then we can use a torque wrench, is really good to use. Even this aluminum setup, the aluminum steer tube, aluminum stem, it's not essential, you don't need it, it's not mandatory, but it's good to do. On a stem like this with aluminum setup, you could do about 5 Newton meters. You're going to want to adjust your torque wrench to 5 Newton meters and tighten it up till it clicks. And we're going to do the bottom one, tighten up till it clicks. So, the headset has been overhauled. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, Facebook, Instagram, check our website for updates, and check back for more.